I think for me, I always used to think of like competitive people as like people I didn't like because they were like very externally competitive and trying to beat other people, you know? And I
Mhm.
never really related to that type of competitiveness. It's always been internal for me. It's always
Mhm.
like, I want to be better than I was yesterday. Like, I want to be the best version of myself. And so, like, when you're saying about staying late to try to learn, to try to figure it out, it's like, for me, it was never, it had never had anything to do with anyone else. It was like, I know I can do more. I know
Yes.
I can be better, and I know I'm capable of that. And there's something really satisfying about putting in that work and doing it,
Mhm.
and knowing that there's no excuses, right? Like, okay, I'm doing it as best as I can, right?
Mhm. Yeah. And like yeah, you have to have that mindset or else you'll go crazy. But like for example, today I was working with like if there's an issue that is more complicated than what we're able to do, then we bring it to a team lead who's had, anywhere from 2 to plus 5 years of experience. If they can't figure it out, then we go to a technical lead who's had 5 to 10 years of experience. And like, I get to the point where some team leads or tech leads can figure out something, and I like subconsciously, I don't want to say beat myself up about that, but I'm like, damn, how did they get there? Why don't I know that yet? Why didn't I figure that out? So then I spent, at the end of the day, when the day-to-day mundane stuff is all figured, all done and said, then I take the time to be like, okay, what did they go through or what did they say to figure that out? Because I want to be on that level. And
Mhm.
sometimes, I mean, I could get into rabbit holes and I spend a little too much time at work, then I put off other things. That's something that like I'm still working on as well. But yeah, it's something that I've definitely noticed that not even in just work, but like in music as well. Um, that's a pattern of mine that I've been trying to improve. So
Going into rabbit holes with music,
yeah,
like in what way?
music and work. Music, like I'll spend hours like digging for music, or I'll spend hours like trying to reverse engineer a song that somebody's produced. Like somebody will uh, put out a YouTube video and said, "Hey, here's how we made the song or part of the song," and then I'll spend hours just being like, "Okay, how did they do that?" Like, 'cause sometimes producers they'll just do it like bing bang bong done, like they'll figure it
Yeah.
out, in 5 minutes. But then I'll go back, pause the video, be like, okay, why did they turn this knob in the DAW? Like, why did they add this parameter? Why did they cut off these frequencies? And I'll have to hear it for myself and like reverse engineer something that took them 5 minutes that'll take me maybe 2 hours.
That's really cool.
Mhm.
It's like you're able to see how they're just intuitive.
Yeah,
They're not thinking about it. They just do it, and
exactly.
you're having to be like, okay, well, what does this do and why are they doing it?
Yeah. Because they've
That's
probably
cool.
done it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times that it's just like, oh yeah, we have to go here to change this or change that to make it sound this way.
It's funny. Music was always one of those things where, again, I'd be like, I'm gonna learn to play the guitar, and I'd learn to play it, but never at any point it was like enjoyable for me.
Hmm.
Like, it was always just one of those things that I just kind of like forced, and that I just like I was determined to learn an instrument, so I learned an instrument. And it's like one of those things that I just always admire people that like yourself that are just can really get curious about it.
Hmm.
And similar to kind of how you talk about your curiosity with music, I always have felt that way with cooking. Like, I like see a dish or I eat a dish at a restaurant. I'm like, how did they make this?
Hmm.
Or I go to the or I see a recipe online. I'm like, man, I want to make that. Like, and you know what you see in a 1 minute Instagram video takes me like 8 hours to produce,
Yeah.
And I find it so satisfying to just like, I don't really care about eating it at the end of the day. For me, it's like learning how it was made and
Hmm.
knowing how to do that myself. It's like this it feels like empowering almost. It's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I know how to do this now." And it's not like crazy complicated, it's just a process, you
Yep.
know?
Yep. And some point, like, even going with your meditations, like you're putting the power back onto you to figure it out, and now you know that information, and you're not as reliant on like the external world to. I mean, initially you are because you have to learn. That's how we all learn. But eventually, you now it's in your head, and nobody can take that away from you.
Yeah, and it's really funny because lately I've been struggling to meditate. And it's funny after having had a practice for so long where probably over the last year I never needed an app. I would just meditate every day and basically guide myself through it. This last month, since I've been so intense with work, I found it really hard to meditate, to kind of go through the more intricate meditations that I am used to doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been like a practice of like self-compassion to like put back on the guided meditation and to like really enjoy it. It's
Mm-hmm.
like almost it's felt like coming full circle. Like I learned to meditate using Headspace in high school. And
Mm-hmm.
then I moved to using Sam Harris. And he always would have these prompts that would just bother me. Like he would ask these questions. I don't have you ever used Sam Harris's app? Just curious.
No, I've done guided, but not him specifically.
So he has these prompts where he'll ask a question, and I'm always like I could never figure out the answer, and it never made sense to me. And he would ask these questions all the time in the meditations, and I would always get frustrated. And then he said, if you're getting frustrated, don't let it get to that point. And I'm like, it's too late. I'm already frustrated. And what's funny is to come back to his app and back to those meditations years later and to hear those prompts completely differently
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to experience what he was talking about. And if we have time, I'll be kind of guiding a similar meditation along those lines. But one of the things that he always talks about is, right now, if you open your eyes and you kind of disassociate from what you're seeing specifically,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you have kind of a loose awareness. You're not focused on anything in particular. All you see are colors, shapes, and shadows, right? There's no one thing in particular.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you can focus on this, the more that becomes your experience. And he always would ask this question, like, are you separate from your perception of your visual field? Is there a seer of the visual field, or is there just the visual field? And he would always ask that question, and I couldn't figure it out. I was like, I think I am seeing the visual field, like I am behind it.
Yeah.
And then I realized, no, that's just a thought. And
Huh.
all our minds are is just that current experience of whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's there is no perceiver of sight, there's just sight. And in this current moment, that is my experience. And then when I'm thinking, oh, I am a seer of sights, that's a thought. And I am experiencing that thought, right? And when I hear good music and I'm thinking and I actually hear it, I am that sound.
Mm-hmm.
I am not a perceiver of sound. As soon as I think I'm a perceiver of sound, well, that's a thought. That's not a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a
Huh.
prompt that he would ask all the time, and it
Huh.
would bother me, and it would frustrate me. And to come back to his meditations and to hear it and to actually understand experientially, to see it, and he would snap his fingers. And so he'd be like, now look for the observer in the space of a finger snap. And he would keep snapping, and I would hate the snap. And it's just so funny because it's and now I feel like I've really learned a lot by going back to listening to guided meditations. And it's felt really good to simplify my practice.
Mm-hmm.
Where now it looks like being really into the body and getting really intimate with all the different sensations. And are we gonna have time to do a meditation after this?
Yeah, 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 of course.
Cool.
How long
So
were you planning it for it?
you tell me.
Okay. I figured we have until like 9:30 ish. So we'll do a little bit more discussion and then however long you feel like you need to go. If we need to go over a little bit, that's okay too. I'm not
Cool.
this stream usually goes till 10:30, so as
Cool.
much time as you need.
Cool. I think probably 15 minutes and we could get a really beautiful meditation, because what I really want to help you experience is like the feeling of dropping fully in to our bodies and
Mhm.
like becoming really aware of kind of the intimate sensations, and then just sitting there, like letting our body go almost, and allowing our mind to kind of go a little deeper into concentration, into awareness, into whatever we want to hone our minds on. And in this meditation we get really intimate with the body, so that way we can leave it in the parking lot, we
Mhm.
can leave it behind, and then we can allow the mind to get really dialed on whatever we want to focus on. And in this case we're going to focus on the darkness behind our closed eyes.
Okay.
When we close our eyes, there's almost this kaleidoscope of colors, and that's constantly changing, and that's not just blackness. There's like this kind of dreamy mystical flavor to it, and we're going to just rest our attention there, and, and we're going to really focus on the distractions that we receive.
Okay.
So when we're focused on that and inevitably our mind wanders, what does that wandering look like for you? Is it a visualization? Is it a sound? Is it a stream of words? Is it a physical sensation or emotion? And the more we can investigate what sidetracks our mind, the more it goes away, you know?
Mm.
And the more we can understand how our mind works. For me, my mind is primarily a stream of consciousness. It's
Mhm.
like this consistent unraveling of words and
Mhm.
thoughts. And I think in terms of like the way that I speak. But sometimes I'm just feeling emotions, or I feel scared and it's a physical sensation. Sometimes it's a visualization, or I hear things. And all those, people think in different ways. And the more we can investigate the nature of the things that distract us from what we're focusing on, the more they go away, oddly enough. The more we
Mm.
can get curiosity and bring curiosity into the things that distract us, the more we realize how ephemeral those distractions are. It's the same with emotions. So if you've ever felt crippling anxiety or heartbreak or sadness, and you really sit with the emotion and you bring in curiosity, you realize that it's changing in every moment.
Mhm.
And the more we can sit with how much it changes and be curious about where we feel it, the more it just then goes away. And then we're kind of back to where we started, right?
Mhm. So two things that come up for me when you mention that, and it's actually two things in my life that I've been going through. So the first one is not accepting what you can't have or accepting what you can't get. I'll bring up the example. So I decided to approach a girl at the gym for the first time ever. Like this goes down to moving down to North Carolina because I told myself I'm not going to be my old self anymore. I'm not going to be acting like a victim. I gave
Yeah.
myself this opportunity to grow and to now that I'm down here, like the things that I want to achieve, like I am capable of. I proved to myself that I could do it. So approaching a girl at the gym was the first one of those things. And I found that she had a boyfriend. And I felt very accomplished, but at the same time, I felt very sad. And I went
Yeah.
through a whole week or two of like having this hard time accepting what I couldn't have or what I couldn't, achieve. And for a while, I was sitting in the meditations, like just kind of working through that, or sometimes like good memories of like other things in my life, like moving down here, like success at work would come through to kind of show me like, hey, keep going, like it's okay. But So that's one thing I've been working through. And then lately, I've kind of gotten over that. I mean, there's still some days where it comes up, but lately it's been like trying to manage all the things that I want to do. And this week, I would say specifically, I sit in my meditation, and sometimes my mind and my body is just chaotic. Like I'm thinking of like things I have to do after the meditation, or like my body, I feel my body jolt like in certain directions, like, hey, it wants to go do these things because it knows that like I have, I usually meditate during the weekdays. I usually meditate at bedtime before I go to bed, or about an
Mhm.
hour or two before I go to bed, shortly after dinner. On the weekends, I do it first thing when I wake up, just because that's what my schedule allows. But at night, whenever I do it during the week, I could feel my body wanting to go do things. So for both of those situations, um, what would you suggest? Am I focusing on how would I approach those meditations or those situations by going into meditation, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does. Well, I will tell you that second point is exactly what I've been experiencing lately. I I have been sitting down to meditate and my mind is everywhere.
Hmm.
And my body wants to do, and I sit down and all I can think about are the things that I need to get done.
Hmm.
And that's okay. You know, that's that's part of the meditation. And today, instead of meditating, I decided to go do those things. I always meditate first thing. I always meditate in the morning. I take my dog for a walk or for a run, and then come home, shower, meditate. And every day I just have to sit down on the cushion. And that's the only requirement. And today I sat down on the cushion and I knew I had this in the evening. I knew I was going to meditate later. And right now, what felt in that moment, what felt most right was I had a very clear vision of what I needed to get done. And what felt good was to get it done.
Hmm.
And so I sat down on the cushion, and instead of trying to fight my way to wrestle my mind into some kind of calmness that wasn't true, I had a newsletter I wanted to write, and I wrote it. And then I emailed all the people that were on my mind. And then, today was a very busy day, and I got everything done
Hmm.
that I wanted to get done. And then at around 6 o'clock, we're at Central Time here, but I
Oh,
grabbed
okay.
dinner, I ate it, and then I sat down on my cushion, and I meditated at that point when my mind was more at ease. I didn't have things trying to pop up to sidetrack me. It felt like I could actually take the only thing that was bothering me was Tangerine wanted to get my attention. Tangerine's my dog,
Yeah.
and she was just kind of barking at me a little bit. But my mind in that moment was very capable, and it felt easier to just let myself rest into it. The only thing I was fighting with was actually just a sense of sleepiness. And I think that when it comes the first point, I don't think I have a good mm, remedy, but I'll tell you what I was taught and how I work through it. Um, Typically, when I do a meditation, there's a series of preliminary steps that you go through, and these preliminaries are essentially just cleaning up the mind.
Hmm.
Let's get our mind to a nice or like a warm up. If I was to go run, I never just go and run. I do some exercises to get my body ready for the movement.
Hmm.
And our minds are the same. And what this lineage does is they talk about, well, let's purify what feels heavy for us. And when we purify, we're going to use intelligent regret. We're going to acknowledge what we did and its effect. We're going to figure out how we can show up differently in the future. And then we're going to be done with it. That's
Hmm.
it. And there's something so simple to it that doesn't feel human because my emotions come in. But what I'm learning is that when I fight that and I have the urge to linger, that's where I need to be harder on myself. to a certain extent. Like there's a time for me to be nurturing and there's a time for me to be hard on myself. And when I allow myself to kind of wallow in those things, it's when I need to be a little bit more firm. Like, no, it's over. You've done what you can. It's time to move on. And that's really the only way that I think about it. And over time, the more that I bring it up, the more that I try to imagine it going and then doing something different instead, it loses that emotional flavor. It doesn't happen overnight, but over time it becomes a little less it's like a wound. It just takes a little time to heal, but the more I look at it and the more that I focus on it, the less intense the memory or spicy the memory is.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And I think even just indirectly, it's caused me, like, if it weren't for meditation, I think it would have lingered much longer too. And I wouldn't have had the time to stay present, really think about the situation or situations and anything that comes up, and really focus on like a almost like an action plan moving ahead. Like you said, like it's over, it's done with, move forward. You have time in your meditation to really feel it and sit with it and say, okay, or even gaining new perspective on it. This is why this thing didn't work out. This is, but you also have this coming forward towards you, or this new thing coming towards you. So I'm glad you brought that up for sure.
Yeah, it's something I work on every day. Every day there are things that I'm like, rats. Listen to that did not go well.
Uh-huh.
Or I
Hmm.
wish I could have done that differently.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think there's for me the struggle has been learning when to be easy on myself and learning when to be hard on myself. It's it's like learning when to place limits, learning when to be nurturing and learning when to guide myself. It's like navigating that has been what my greatest challenge has been lately. And because there's a time for all of it. And if you're
Hmm.
only ever hard on yourself, then you're going to be exhausted all the time. And that doesn't sound like a very like enjoyable way to live. And if you're always nurturing or easy with yourself, then you're never going to get anything done. And you're going to kind of wallow in kind of nothingness almost. And so it's
Hmm.
like, for me, it's been finding that balance. And I think when it comes to my meditation practice, I think I'm firm where every day I just sit on the cushion. That's all I have to do.
Hmm.
Easy. If you tell me you don't have the time to just sit on your meditation cushion, you're being just silly,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then whether or not I meditate afterwards is just it's optional. And in what that meditation looks like depends largely on, well, what's my mind like today? Because I think every day that I come to the cushion, my mind is a little different. Is it agitated? Is it sleepy? Is it and you could almost look at agitation and sleepy as two ends of a spectrum. The mind's always somewhere in between, right?
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. Two things I wanted to bring up before we do hop in. First, we met through Fit for Service, so I wanted to
Mm.
acknowledge that. I don't know if you have any like intentions of doing any community stuff this year. I think I am going to go to the Arcadia this year. I think
Cool.
that's something in my calling. But I also was able to reach out to Mitchell, and he mentioned that they're in the process of restructuring their like program. So it seems like the men's circles are going to come back. It just might
I
take
hope
a
they
little bit.
do.
Yeah, it was so great. Like I really looked forward to those.
I loved those men's circles were so healing for me.
Yeah.
Like that was I did the retreat one year and I in the one in Austin maybe 2 years ago, and I really enjoyed it. It was really powerful. It was really expensive,
I know that's
and
the really thing that's holding me back.
yeah, it was really expensive, and at the time, it was completely worth it. Right now, it doesn't feel as much in alignment,
Mhm.
unfortunately. I would love to do it again because you just meet it's almost like you just enter a cool atmosphere where people are bringing a really beautiful energy. They're healing, they wanna show up for you, and I it was really beneficial for me. I really enjoyed that. It's just really expensive, and I don't
Yeah.
know if I can do it again this year.
Yeah.
But I more than the retreat, I actually found the men's calls to be the most impactful thing that I did. Like, was it once a month or once every other week? Like,
Yeah, every 2 weeks. Yeah.
and
Yep.
then like having that, like I remember there were just so many times where something would happen, and I'm like, man, I can't wait to like bring this up on the men's call and to be able to just like get guidance from people.
Yeah.
And I loved it, and then to have the similar cast of characters over the years and hear what people were working on, and, like, when I think you had, like, lost your job and you were meditating for an hour every day and you were getting
Yep.
your certifications and you were like, "I'm gonna go to Raleigh, I'm gonna get the job," and then, like, throughout the months to see that unfold was just
Yeah.
so cool, you know?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Because for me, I'm just talking about it, but people are actually witnessing it happen. So from your perspective and whatnot, hearing this come full circle is awesome.
It
Yeah.
it it is wild how full circle it's become. Because it was literally like we were probably on those calls for over a year together,
Easily.
and
Yeah.
just, like, between you and I, where I was at a year ago, it's, like, hard to fathom, you know, I feel like my life has changed in such a positive way since then, and I love those calls. I
Mhm.
miss them.
Mhm. And I feel like there was a group of people I could genuinely trust, like with
Yeah.
anything that I wanted to talk about, you know? Maybe even some more than some of my family because they would be biased in certain aspects, you know? Maybe a little protective, maybe a little opinionated about something, but there you could get perspectives from all different types of people that you trust.
Yeah. It was, like, the first place where I felt like I could share this shit, and I
Hmm.
realized that nobody cares, you know?
Hmm.
Or, like, I felt like I could share this stuff that I was embarrassed to show the world, and when I would show it to everyone, they'd be like, "Man, you're beautiful. You're
Hmm.
human. Like, there's nothing wrong with you."
Hmm.
And that perspective was so healing because there were so many parts of myself that I felt like I was embarrassed to say, like, I struggled with porn. I would drink way too much and the way I'd beat myself up, and to have a space where I could bring those things out and to have guys just be like, "Man, like, I love you, bro. Like, you're a good person. It's
Hmm.
okay. You're a human being having a human experience. There's nothing to worry about." Was like, wow. Like, it was so foreign to me. I had never experienced that before. I don't know if you had, but for me it was like totally brand
No.
new.
Yeah, for sure. Cause like definitely, cause like growing up, I've had my biological father passed away, and I had my stepdad who we were somewhat close, but like growing up, we never had like certain father to father talks that I didn't
Yeah.
get that I could get from like friends or a group of brothers or like I mean like by brothers I mean like men circles. So
Yeah.
like having that connection and having that rekindling of like the masculine in my life was very powerful. It was very cool. And
Yeah, like
yeah.
like it was um like a healthy masculine.
Yes,
you
yes,
know?
100%,
I
100%.
felt like I was consistently around like an intense masculinity of like competition and driving and like that. But then all of a sudden to have like, no, you need to look at this. You need to feel your emotion. You need to
Yeah.
share it. Like that was new to me. And that was really cool. And I thought that Fit for Service did just a really good job of just showing me what healthy masculinity looked like, you know?
Mhm. Yep. And here's the thing: if they don't start it like within the next 1 to 2 months, I think maybe I'll just start one of my own.
I'll show up.
Okay. All
You
right.
know I'm there.
All right, for
You get the
sure.
same time, and I'll be there. We'll
Yeah,
get this
yeah,
thing done too.
for sure. Keep it going. But last day we are getting to that time, so I want to bring up one last question. You being and this is something I'm kind of like battling because I'm a person who has a lot of hobbies. I have a lot of things I want to go towards, but I'm also at this point where I have a good checkpoint. Like I've accomplished a lot in the past year, with my certs. I've moved down here, but now I want to start getting into like socializing and start meeting people around the area. And you recently just started a business and you're working with your dad, you said, on this?
Yeah,
So you're
there's
working.
now 6 people there at the company. So
Okay.
I started with my dad and one other guy named John.
Okay. Awesome. So you started with them and you're very, it seems like you're putting a lot of time and effort into it. Probably outside of the normal 9 to 5 as well, since being a business owner, I'm sure. And for me, I'm putting in the extra time working for learning my new job. I'm putting in the extra time for running the stream. I'm also putting the
Yeah.
extra time in for music stuff. But eventually I want to start getting into relationships. So, or a relationship and friendships as well, by what I mean by
Yeah.
relationships. But, question for you is how do you manage putting in that extra effort and also having a relationship as well?
Yeah, I don't know. When I figure it out, I'll let you know. I it's a I don't know. I think
Yeah.
that my life is inherently unbalanced at times. I
Mhm.
think that I even do my friendships in an intense kind of way. Like, I realized I hadn't seen a lot of my friends in Austin in a while, so I hosted a dinner and I had them all come over and I wrote them all little gratitude cards and told them how much I cared and I was in their circle and I was like, that's how I'm gonna do it. In 2 hours, I got to see everyone I wanted to see. I hadn't seen it in a couple months, and it's something that I needed or that I want to work on.
Mhm.
But I'm also just like, there's not enough hours in the day to be everything to everyone all the time.
Mhm.
And for for me and what I've been learning lately and what I'm trying to learn more of is just my own authenticity. Like, what do I want to do? What like who am I, right? And coming from a place of being able to be fully authentic and honoring what I need and what I want has made relationships a lot easier. So with my partner showing up at the end of a long day and being like, "Hey, I'm really worn out. There's nothing that you can give me. I just need rest, but I would love to talk. We can keep things light, but I don't have a whole lot to give you right now." And it's been hard for me to acknowledge that, but
Mhm.
and then also to acknowledge like, hey, we don't talk during the day and I see you once a week. And that's just the way it has to be because that's where I'm focused right now. And with friends, I realize that there's just some friends that I just keep in touch with sporadically.
Mhm.
Like, we kind of meld in and out of each other's lives at different times, but most of my friends, they don't need consistent attention. Like, they know I'm there and I know they're there. And
Mhm.
sometimes I want companionship, like I want to share a meal with someone, and sometimes I'm looking for like real guidance. And I think for me the biggest thing is like developing relationships with the people that I see every day with work. Being a good coworker and showing up to them with kindness. And then, you know, showing up to the people that I see randomly in the world and trying to think about them as being friends as well and not like excluded from me.
Mhm.
So I don't know. That's what I'm working on lately. I certainly do not have it figured out by any means. And
Mhm.
honestly, I'd love to hear how you think about it because
It,
that's just where I'm at.
yeah, it's been tough because like since moving here, I mean, I've let go of friends even with just shifting through like COVID and the past like music groups. I've made new friends and let go of a lot of friends, and it made me really rethink what I value in friendship because I'm sure with you, like not all of your friends run, but and they're not all similar, but you also value that companionship or someone who can just grab dinner with you. And I had a hard time with that initially because I wanted to be around people who grow and people who want to better themselves. So like I want to be around people who like take care of their body, take care of their mind, take care of the health, but I also was leaving out certain things like, leaving out companionship or leaving out people who will just sit on the phone with you and hear you out no matter what. take time to really listen to what you have to say without interrupting. So it's kind of something I've struggled with, because you always hear that saying, like, you surround yourself with the five, you most likely, you become most like the five friends you surround yourself with. And it made me really think about the type of people I wanted to surround myself with. And in the past, I would always just be like, if this person's not growing, in the ways that maybe I'm growing, maybe it's time to reconsider our friendship, or time to start not spend or start spending less time with them. But then you also have to value in, certain aspects of friendship. Friends who will, say, "Hey, I'm thankful for you for hearing me out," or thankful for this or that, or even just if you have to randomly call them on a day and just, got something on the mind, they're willing to listen, and vice versa as well, if they call me. So I don't have it completely figured out either. I would
Yeah.
like to say, like, I want to start being around, like, there's friends I think I like you with you as well that you'll be with around more sporadically, or you'll hang out with them, and that's okay. But I also want to make sure I'm being around friends who want to continue to grow themselves and take care of their mind, body, and their spirit, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Totally.
And
Makes
I
perfect sense.
and I think that's why fit for service was such a big thing I was attracted to, because I knew those were like-minded people who were on that path. But also, it's very
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah. That was what drew me to it as well. I felt like they were looking at everything, not just one thing, and I felt like I had met a lot of people that were really good at one of the things. Like they were really good at the business or the relationship, but it always came at a sacrifice. And I felt like they just contextualize it. It's like, look, all these things are important. You need all of them. You can't just live without money. Like, and you can't live without like some kind of purpose. You
Mhm.
need all these things. And it's funny you mentioned like being in the room and surrounding yourself with you become the people you surround yourself with. For me, the challenge is actually to not see myself as better than anyone. And that's been my learning because I just can be arrogant in my own head. I can walk into a room and think I'm superior. And honestly, for me, my practice is walking into a room and thinking I'm not better than anyone and thinking that everybody has something to teach me and that everybody has beautiful qualities in some way. And that's been my challenge because, every time I thought that I outgrew a friend, for me, it was just coming from like a place of not accepting who I was and not seeing myself in that person. And there was a way where I could accept them and love them and still set boundaries for myself, right? Like when I'm coming from a place of integrity and fulfilling my needs, I find that it doesn't matter who I'm around, that I can kind of learn from most people. And I don't really expect my friends to give me anything. I don't expect my friends to give me encouragement or to fill my loneliness. It's like I try to give that to myself first, and then I'm able to show up, I feel like, in a different way. And it's not perfect, but that's what I'm practicing, you know?
Mhm. Wow, that's good. That's really good. Yeah. Yeah. And that goes along with, like, putting the power back in you, because you don't have to expect anything from anyone else. And you're just there to be there for them, and learn. So,
Yeah, it was honestly a lesson that was I mentioned how like December was a really tough month for me. And I took that break with my partner, and then January's been like the opposite. It's been very nice. And in December, I just finally learned to give myself the validation that I craved from other people. Like in work, I wanted somebody to tell me you're doing a good job. But I was never telling myself like after I would write a good email like great job, Tim. Like you did a great job today.
mhm,
Like when I would go for a tough run to be like, Tim, you're a badass. Like
mhm,
you get out and you did it. Like good job. Like I'm proud of you.
mhm,
And like instead of wanting my partner to tell me I'm handsome or I'm worthy, like walking into a room is like, Tim, you're beautiful. Like you're a good person. You're handsome. Like it's such little things, but it's like I used to want other people to tell me those things.
Mhm.
And that's a lonely way to live. When as soon as I just started giving it to myself, the whole just equation changed.
Mhm.
And it's like that's what I've been practicing lately, and that's what I've the biggest thing I've learned these last couple months.
And then and to put that into context, there's a difference between, and I think the reason why that was hard on me too was because I didn't want to fall into the trap of being narcissistic, because
Yeah.
you could be into that trap of being narcissistic where you're like all about yourself and you're always like loving yourself a little too much, if that makes sense. But
Yeah.
there's the difference between doing that where it's so extreme than actually just self-love practices of being like, yeah, patting yourself on the back, fulfilling, keeping your inner child happy, letting them know that they're safe and that you did great, and that you're growing and successful. So that was a big struggle for me, because that I didn't want to fall far on the other extreme where it was all about myself.
Yeah. I think for me it was with work because nobody was telling me good job.
Ah,
you know?
yeah,
Nobody was saying good job, Tim. Nobody
yeah.
was telling me, Tim, you did a great like maybe I'd hear it rarely, but 99% of my day was just me alone getting work done, calling on calls with people, and like occasionally I would hear things, right? But I wouldn't nobody was telling me good job. Like nobody
Hmm.
was telling me I wasn't getting validation from my friends like you're crushing it. Like I'm not making any money. Like I'm nothing is externally validating right now.
Hmm.
It's nothing's I'm not getting anything that people are like, "Oh, you started a company. That's awesome. Like that's badass. Like I want to be an entrepreneur, this and that." I'm like, it doesn't feel awesome right now. Like I'm waiting for it to feel better because it's not there yet, you
Hmm.
know? And so it just came from like I needed to learn to give it to myself if I was going to keep doing this.
Hmm.
Because otherwise I just was like it, just kind of losing my swagger to a certain extent or losing my confidence. And
Yep.
then once I realized that it wasn't giving it to myself with work, I was able to see it how I was looking for it in other parts of my life, you
Hmm.
know?
Great perspective, man. Appreciate you sharing, for sure.
Yeah, hopefully it's helpful in some way.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.